Welcome to Amidon Planet. I'm your host, Joel Amidon. Thank you for joining me on this never-ending quest to learn how to teach better. Today on episode 94 of the podcast, I'm talking about teaching about talking. Yeah, more specifically, I'm talking to my son, Noah Amidon, who is a graduate of Oxford High School, a member of Oxford High School's speech and debate team. He happens to be the highest point earner in team history. He's an academic All-American, degree of premier distinction, which is the highest degree a student can earn in the National Speech and Debate Association. And I'm talking to him about learning how to teach better. So let me set the stage. For the 2 weeks in the past month, I've had the opportunity to serve as a judge in 2 national speech and debate tournaments. The first was the National Catholic Forensic League Championships in Louisville, Kentucky. And then the second one was last week. It was in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was judging the National Speech and Debate Association Championships. I was never in speech and debate in high school, though maybe now that I love doing podcasts, maybe there was a spot for me somewhere. I just never did it. Anyway, during the pandemic, my son got involved with speech and debate and just fell in love with it and achieved a degree of success, obviously, from some of those accolades I mentioned before. Humble brag about my son. And just now on the periphery and seeing all the different things he was doing with the writing and the competing, where during the pandemic it was a lot of him in his room, like dressed with a suit on his top and maybe shorts on the bottom because it was on Zoom. Anyway, and then going back to face-to-face tournaments throughout his junior and senior year, and just again seeing the passion that he had for the activities, and then also getting exposed to it through participating as a judge in these events where that you need to, as a team, you need to bring judges to events, and again, just trying to fill a need in some of those spots. And so, and just being an observer of what was happening, it was kind of amazing, some of these lessons that I saw about good teaching that was occurring within his team and what I was seeing at these tournaments. And so wanted to have a conversation about it, had an opportunity to talk to him in a nice summer day in his room. And so we recorded this episode. So I'm not going to delay anymore. Again, thankful for Noah sharing his time here, but here's my talk with Noah Amidon, talking about lessons learned about teaching from his experiences and my experiences being exposed to on the periphery about speech and debate. Noah Amidon, welcome back to Amidon Planet. How are you?
I'm doing well. It feels good to be back.
Actually, maybe you never leave Amidon Planet. Maybe you kind of exist on Amidon Planet.
Yeah, it is our family group chat, so I guess I'm just constantly in orbit.
That's right. Oh, that's good. Hey, so I wanted to have you on the podcast to talk about lessons. So, Amidon Planet is about learning how to teach better. And I was thinking about something profound that your coach, Ryan Bankston, said when you, and I'll just humble brag for you, got second place in the NCFL public forum event in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes.
So, wait, let's just get that right. You and Ficker.
Yes.
What's Ficker's full name?
Ficker Bayana.
Ficker Bayana got second place in public forum, which is a 2v2 speech or debate event.
Yes.
All about what?
Using facts and evidence to try and win an argument, more so targeted at the layman. Okay.
So you did really well in that at the National Catholic Forensics League Championship in Louisville, Kentucky a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And your coach, Ryan Bankston, mentioned to me that it's kind of a weird, speech and debate is weird, and the fact is the coach rarely, if ever, gets to see you perform.
Yes, correct.
Right?
Yes.
Which is kind of profound. And so and also too, there's been a lot of success with your speech and debate team. Your second place with Ficker was outstanding, but there's been a lot of success. But thinking about how do you help coach somebody up in a place where you don't get to see them do the thing that you're helping them or facilitating them doing. And so I was it just made me think about all the different things that, with over the past year and a half, maybe judging speech and debate events and seeing you prepare, or even during the pandemic, hearing you in your room, in this room where we're recording, like yelling into a computer while you were competing during the pandemic, and just, seeing all that and just having all that exposure, like there's some lessons to be learned about learning how to teach better from this experience. And so wanted to have you on. I've got some lessons that I think I've learned, but I want to see what you think about them with regards to learning how to teach better. What do you think?
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So I don't think that any of these are particularly profound or new, but I think that they reinforce some best practices that I know exists, but deserve to be repeated. All right.
Okay.
So one is, the first one I want to say is empower, which in other words, don't hoard power. So thinking about like the way that your speech and debate team is like run is almost like as you grow and in your experience, or basically move through high school, like you become the experts at something, and basically your coach has empowered you all to help the next generation in that event. So like if public forum, like you're helping prep the next people with their cases and things so that they're ready for the next event, or even how to do the event. It feels like that is the kind of the environment that has been created. What do you think about that?
Oh, yes, entirely. So yeah, like that's how we try to run our team. Entirely based off of how can we that have been around and have found success, how can we pass down the lessons that got us to our success and teach others? In fact, like our entire way that our leadership structure works, we don't, when we look for leaders within our team and look to give leaders titles in our team, we don't look to be like, who would be good at doing this? Who would be the best person who could lead public forum and teach people how to do public forum or policy debate or linguistic debate or et cetera. What we try to do is we try to look for the leaders who have already stepped up within our team. So right now we had a really good crop of sophomores and juniors, and we were like, okay, these people have been leaders in our team already. They don't have a title. They're just members of our team, but we've seen what they've already done for leadership. And so what we do is we empower them. We're like, hey, what you're doing is good. Let's give you the title to reflect what you've already been doing, instead of the opposite way around, which in my experience, or in my view, actually creates better leaders, because you aren't just assigning leadership to a person who you think would be a good leader. You're assigning leadership to a person who has been a good leader. Yeah,
and I want to see it. And so in my work as a teacher of teachers, I've actually heard somebody say, like, don't even say the word empower. It's actually just saying, it's not empowering because you already have power. Yes. It's not taking your power away from you.
Correct.
Versus, I think that there are, when you go to a national tournament or a couple national tournaments, you can see how some coaches and just like teachers can take that power away. Like, no, I will tell you how to run your cases. I'm going to tell you how you run this event. Versus, no, that power is remained within you, the competitors and the students and the team, to pass along best practice. Because again, it's best because you're actually in the room and getting the judge's notes and you're seeing what's successful.
Oh, yeah, and even like on that point about like case writing.
What's case?
So whenever you are preparing for an event, most debates.
Use the example of the public. What was your public forum?
So in our last public forum tournament, our topic was AI in education has more benefits than harms. Probably something that's been talked about on this podcast. I'm not sure, but a big topic in education.
Wow, you haven't really been listening, but we haven't talked about that yet.
My bad.
It's coming up.
Right.
Future episode of Amidon Planet.
But most of them aren't as education focused, but that one was. But anyway, so what that means is we have to create a pro side of that resolution and a con side of that resolution. And so you basically have to write that from scratch as a debater. So for me, who's been doing public forum for 3 years, that comes a little bit easier to me. And I have, me and my partner, we have a better idea of an understanding on like how to write a case that wins. We know how to link to create warrants, just like statements of like claims, and then go from like claimed fact and linking that all the way to a massive impact, which in our case, for the cases that got us all the way to the final round was linking into AI in education can solve racism. Big impact, and an impact that we knew that we could win with. So that's what an experienced debater knows. Now, I'm going to use a term, novices. I'm probably going to use that a bunch. But a novice in speech and debate is somebody who it's their first year of competing. So our novices, they walk into our room at the beginning of the year, and their first topic in public forum debate was about high-speed rail, and basically high-speed rail has more benefits than harms. And the cases that they were writing, and under our guidance, we let them just like run amok with them. And some of these cases were like, oh, okay, you can do that. That's a correct way to write a case. In back of my head, I'm like, ooh, this might not work. But I'm not going to be the one to tell them, hey, at your first tournament, you don't want to run this. You're not going to win with this. Because it is important in order to let someone learn and to learn from their own mistakes. And then afterwards, after the tournament, because they could have won a bunch of rounds, or they could have maybe only won one round and lost 4. Then after the tournament, we can look through their ballots, the judge feedback, and be like, hey, maybe if you connect your arguments a different way, maybe if you make that middle part of your argument stronger, or maybe you need to make the end part of it stronger. Maybe you need to make the impacts that tell the judge why they should vote for your side stronger. And so that's something that I find really important is to, yes, at first when you don't know anything about the event, you're going to fail. And you're going to not know exactly how to. And I, as a captain of our team, I could tell them, hey, this is what you need to do to write. I could give them a case. I could give them the case that I was running in the varsity bracket. But if I did that, they would never get to the point where they could then have the potential to write a case for someone who's a novice. But I hope that they would never do that because of the lesson that I showed them.
This is amazing. This is exactly what I'm going to be going into my 13th year, 12th, whatever, year here at the university and teaching teachers. And that's what you just said, where you're like giving them space to fail, which is it's like a 4-letter F word in school sometimes, letting people fail in order to learn from that mistake. So just making a mistake and learning from those mistakes and giving them the freedom to do that rather than going in like a helicopter and be like, no, let's stop there. Don't make that mistake. Don't do this instead. Blah, blah, blah. Versus like they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. And so you're giving them a formula where they don't even know why they need that formula. Versus later they'd be like, man, Noah, I think I need some help learning how to strengthen my end because I think my middle is good. Or oh, what do you think about how we ran this case? And so like giving them power to fail, right? Power to make mistakes and learn from the mistakes versus stealing that from them. And then them having the aha, like, ooh, I was doing really well until here. Now I need help with that. And now there's like a need, a necessity. And that's a necessity principle is something where you've created an environment where they see the need for something versus if you would have stepped in and done every single step along the way, they don't see that need. Yeah.
Oh, and it also it helps me also learn more about the event and how to be successful because sometimes I look at these novice cases and I'm like, I have no clue what you're doing with this. Like, I don't know who's ever going to vote with this, but I hold my tongue and then they go and they win a bunch of ballots and I'm like, whoa. They've taken it on a completely different approach, but it's working.
Yeah.
And so then I get to learn more about the event. I'm like, okay, how can I incorporate some of this strategy into my own? Because they're coming into this event with fresh eyes. I definitely have old eyes when it comes to public forum. I've been doing it for 3 years and I'm like, and so I have a methodical system in my head about how it's supposed to look. And then they come and they don't have that methodical system. They're just like, oh, we're going to win this argument this way. And I'm like, okay, that's not the typical way. But when it comes back and gives them results, I'm like, okay, how can I then incorporate some of what they've done into my own work?
That's another great thing. Because, I mean, when you see something and allow someone's brilliance to shine versus causing them to change track or do something else where they're not willing to be experimental, where I'm guessing you can see that. I'm just putting a guess out there that there's some teams, don't name them, some teams where you know exactly how they're going to run cases because that's the blank school way of debating.
So
maybe no. It's okay.
I agree with half of that statement.
Okay.
The teams.
This
yes.
is what it's like to live with a debater. Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So the teams, yes. Like definitely.
There's a flavor to the teams.
Oh yeah, it's like this team is going to bring something that you've never seen before.
But they all bring it though.
No. So I mean like the partnership themselves.
Oh, gotcha.
So when when I meant teams, I mean the partnership themselves. That's another distinction is like when you're talking like if I'm talking about another school, you would never say like yes, you'd be like I'm just going to use an example like the Oak Grove team like. You would just refer to that as like the school, while the team would be the individual group of partners. Okay. So sorry, that's my
vernacular. Yes. Okay.
So anyway, so if I'm up against a certain duo of partners, I can kind of usually expect what they're going to be running, whether it be an argument that like everyone, because I'm a part of multiple debate Discord servers and Reddit pages and threads and there's also all these like evidence briefs that are out there. And so there's some arguments that we call stock because it's like everyone has them. It's the kind of the most obvious arguments to reach, and there's just tons and tons of evidence on it. So there's certain teams where it's just like I know if I go against them that they're going to run a stock argument. But some of them they'll do a stock argument and they're going to win with it. Some you'll be like they're going to run a stock argument and I'll be able to bulldoze them with my prepared prep. And then there's other teams where it's like I have no clue what to expect. Where it's either like it's going to be really really good or I just like it's a wild card. So yes, there definitely is like some expectations you can have when you go up against other teams. But I would say not necessarily schools. Just because there is a lot of independence within each school. Like the way that I debate is entirely different than how the other main public forum team from our school debates. Our case, right? Like our cases, if you held them up next to each other, would be completely different.
Interesting. So that leads into another thing I'm going to get to in just a sec, but just to keep going on with the empower piece, there's something called a community of practice. And I see what you're doing with speech and debate, or how speech and debate is structured at the school, is like a community of practice where we're trying, like you literally have the term novices, and that's what you would say, like a novice or someone who's peripherally participating, like, and you're saying like, hey, you just go in and try doing it. You're going to try and do the actions and use the tools that we would use, maybe not in an experienced way or a knowledgeable way, but hey, let's go for it. Just get into it and just start making a mess. But like, as you're saying, it's interactions between more experienced and less experienced folks. And even inviting in these competitions where you're interacting with folks from other institutions. Cause like at these national tournaments, you kind of see how Mississippi kids are kind of hanging out together and maybe even talking back and forth about, hey, what's might be best to do in certain situations. Possibly. Yeah. But then, and then seeing like how you move forward is by those interactions. Like, oh, you're going to try something and then you learn something. So you get to be more experienced. So you're all moving more central in this community of practice. So like becoming more expert as you're moving along. Your interactions with a novice team might seem like, well, they're moving ahead and well, you wouldn't move ahead. But you, like you just said, you learn something. So you even grow as you're coaching them up or learning something and seeing how they're being successful within that. And then see also too, how you're providing tools. So like the empowering of providing tools, you talked about Reddit and Discord servers and
interactions
cases
that I have with the debate mafia that exists, the underworld.
Yeah, so all that. And then even too, this idea of challenging the process where even I've heard, and again, I've been on buses that have gone all the way to New Orleans. I've been with you all for a week in Phoenix last week and then around in Louisville during the NCFL championships, and hearing about these different sort of things that people could do. So I say that's like kind of a challenge the process sort of thing where you feel like you have if you are empowered, if you have your power, if your power is not taken from you, then you can challenge the process where you can run cases where you are coming out of left field. You can like do things that are, this is within the bounds of the event, but we're going to do something a little bit different. Like, do you have any examples of that?
Well, yeah, like the first example that exactly comes to mind, and you're probably thinking this too, is this original oratory piece that we saw at in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Where the entire premise of it was, I'm following the rules of this event, but I'm not following the made up rules. Because that exists so much throughout debate, is these quote unquote like rules.
We would call that the hidden curriculum.
Yes. Yeah. Like in speech and debate, you're supposed to wear a suit. Nowhere in the NSDA rulebook does it say that. In speech and in this type of speaking style, you're supposed to have your 3 points that you walk in a triangle with. You can find that nowhere in the NSDA rulebook.
Yeah.
Like, and there's all
literally
these,
people, you see people walk in a triangle, and that is like, what do they call that?
It comes from extemporaneous speaking, so it's called the extemp triangle, but it's used in almost every event.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, there's all of these like just made up rules. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second is, my own congressional debater mentee. Can I use his name?
Sure.
All right. I'm just going to Tommy, who Tommy just absolutely destroyed the competition in NSDA this weekend. He's a sophomore, but he placed top 10 in the nation in congressional debate in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Which is a really big deal. Came from a field of about 500 or 600.
An amazing finish.
And finished at 10.
So yeah, two bringing in from 2 different championships, bringing home hardware is a great thing for the team. Anyway, keep going.
So yeah, Tommy is very, very skilled in his event of congressional debate, which is what I am captain of, and what my primary focus is when teaching novices and varsity team members is congressional debate. And I'll tell you firsthand, I hate the way Tommy does Congress. Like, every time he gets up to speak, I have a little bit of a heart attack, because it's not the style that I personally use. It's not the style that anyone else in that final round used. It's his.
Yeah,
and it clearly does well, but it's definitely like not what is typical. And I think that is so interesting, because it's like you don't have to follow these made up rules, because it's like. And you'll attest to this because you watched a little bit of that round. It's like every other person in the room was doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. But then Tommy gets up there, and it's just like it's a breath of fresh air for all the judges and for everyone else, because he's not just getting up there, reading off his legal pad, reciting evidence. No, he's using a bunch of rhetorical appeals, really challenging every other debater in the room. And that's just what's so impressive, and how he's kind of looked at this event and just made it his own, and is not just fallen into the trap of doing what everyone else does.
Yeah. And I think that gets another thing too, is like tapping into like the empowering, or not taking away someone's power, is finding them opportunities to show their brilliance. And I think, Tommy's got some brilliance that he got to showcase in that event. But differences. And even too, I had the opportunity to see you doing public forum, and so in speech and debate events, you put a paradigm for how you judge. And one of the things I say about judging is I want someone to be slow and deliberate in their speaking, and so that I can hear their points, so I can properly evaluate them. And Noah does something called spreading. What is spreading, Noah?
Oh, I don't say I would spread, but
Noah.
You haven't seen a policy round. Policy round, it's like not understandable.
Okay.
Spreading is basically just talking fast so you can get more words out. Because in public forum, you only get 4 minutes to talk in your rebuttal speech. So you
used every single minute.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah. Well, so yeah, like our constructive case, my partner reads off at a normal pace, and it's typically like 2.5 pages long. My rebuttal speech that I gave in the same amount of time, both 4 minutes, was about 12 pages.
That's it. So anyway, you get to do what you, and again, that's allowing the freedom, right? Versus someone might say, Tommy, you got to do it like everybody else, or Noah, slow down, and like versus no, hey, you've been successful in this way, and you get to experience it in order to, do your own thing, do how you want to do it. And I like that as part of speech and debate. And then that kind of leads into the next one, where I say suggest, don't tell. So we talk about power, we talk about suggest. And so it's similarly of not taking away power, but like when you say suggest, don't tell, there is something about what I call the power of the door. So like teachers, Like you can suggest that a teacher does something, but eventually they can shut their door and they can teach how they want to teach, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, yes, there might be the walkthrough, but again, the majority of the time, the teachers do have a lot of power on how they can proceed. So, like thinking about you too is like, Coach Banks. It'd be funny to think of Coach Bankston as like some sort of dictator, like telling you exactly how you're going to do something. But then eventually, you go into competition. No one else is. It's just you and the judge. The competition and the judges.
Yes,
you can do whatever you want, right? Yeah. So there is some sort of power of the door. Do you find that weird that whole thing about not your coach never really sees you competing?
Yeah, it is kind of it is. It is odd when you look at it in the perspective of other sports and activities. That yes, like your coach is supposed to lead you, but also like has no idea what you're doing. Like even in final rounds, which are typically open, it is extremely rare to see a coach in that room, except if it's like a national final round.
Yeah.
Even going like even at nationals, like when we were at the NCFL tournament, for the last like. Once we broke into elimination rounds, all those rounds were open to coaches and observers. But I don't remember seeing like anyone who was a coach of the other team actually in those rooms. And I almost wonder if that is sort like, on one hand there is limitations because often at local tournaments coaches are judges. Each team has a required judge quota, so the coaches are responsible.
They're busy. They're doing.
They're
other
busy.
Things.
They're watching other students compete. But also, I honestly do think it is a benefit to the student that they don't have their coaches in the rooms with them, because then it does allow for more of a less pressure system, because you don't have to listen to exactly what your coach does. At the end of the day, it's up to you, the competitor, on what you're going to say in that room or how you're going to perform your piece. And I think that's really important in the activity of speech and debate. And it's not like coaches are completely blind from what's happening. After each round, students are given a ballot full of feedback, and that's accessible to them and their coach. And then as captains of our team, the captainship, which are essentially other lower level coaches, we also have access to those ballots.
Yeah.
Or we're given access by by Mr. Bankston to those ballots. So we aren't completely blind to all that's happening in the room. And we are able to read the ballot, and especially from a student's perspective, who's been there before. So from my perspective as a captain, I read a ballot, I see what this judge says. I might even know the judge because they might have judged me before, but there are definitely buzzwords within that ballot and things that I see. When I read a ballot, I can immediately pinpoint exactly what this judge is trying to say, if they weren't being entirely clear, and tell someone, hey, this is why this judge didn't like you or voted you down or ranked you last in a round if it's speech events, which are 6 performers ranked 1 through 6. I can read this ballot and tell you exactly like what this judge was thinking. And you don't have to see it. And I would even go to argue that this is actually a better system than the coach being in the back of the room, because at the end of the day, the coach is not casting a ballot.
Right.
It's the judges that are casting a ballot. And you don't have to win over or do what your coach thinks is right. You have to do what the judge thinks is right. So I think reading the judge's ballot and seeing how you perform from the judge's perspective is honestly so much more effective than having the coach in the back of the room, and could be much, much better than if the coach was in there and be like, oh, well, you just got robbed. Like, I think like you did everything to a T, and yeah. Like I don't know what happened. Like, you should have won that round. You were definitely the best person in the room. Well, that's not helpful, because the judge was the one casting the ballot, and they clearly didn't think that you won.
Right.
So
it's same thing for like in a basketball game. It's like, oh, you got fouled. Well, the whistle didn't blow, so there was no foul, right?
Yeah.
Like that's sort of the same thing there, where you can't really make something up. It's like, what is the bar? The bar is that judge that's right across from you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, again, the power of the door, I think that opens up creativity. We kind of already touched on that, the idea of creativity and being able to have some space in order to do things that, again, fit your skill sets. But also, too, I hear a lot of I see and you statements, like that shoulder tapping, where it's like, probably with a lot of novices when they're trying to find their events, and saying like, yeah, you tried this, but maybe I see in you as a policy debater, or I see in you as a extemp debater. Like, what do you think about that? About the idea of those I see in you statements?
I think they are incredibly important, particularly in speech and debate, because at every single tournament there's probably like 14 to 16 events going on. I would have to count them out. And you as a person are only able to enter in a maximum of 4. So you can enter an event and think, oh, I really like this event. Like this is a lot of fun, but just keep on getting bad ranks. And so it is important for those of us who have been around the block, who have done a lot of these events, and if not have done them, have watched them, or have seen the people who have succeeded in this event, be able to read the ballots and be like, you know what, like, I know you really like Congress, but I've seen you do Congress, and yes, you really like it, and yes, you're really good at the preparedness of it. Like, we have one novice who just loves Congress, would die on that hill, but lacks some of the certain skills that translate to being very, very good at Congress. However, the preparedness ability that they have currently going into Congress, the dedication they have for that, could make them an incredible debater in my opinion, policy debate, which requires just a ton of research and preparedness, and then also thinking on the fly, but also you get more reliance on your notes. But that's because you're going to be speaking for a ton more time, and there's more reliance on the preparedness than speaking off the cuff of your sleeve.
Yeah. And so, given all those different events especially the speech side, I mean, there's some where you have things memorized, some of them where you're speaking extemporaneously, some of it where you have a little bit of prep time, and like it's kind of amazing. I think the first event I ever judged was, what's the one where you get 2 topics and you get 7 minutes?
Impromptu. 3 topics, but yeah.
3 topics. You have to pick one. You get 7 minutes, and within that 7 minutes, you need to have a.
So within that 7 minutes, you decide how long you're gonna. Within the 7 minutes, you have to prepare and give a speech. So like part of that 7 minutes, you're just staying there silently. But yeah, you as the speaker get to choose how much time you prepare with.
Yeah, and so that's where you see like. I mean, in some of I think one of them was like the Avengers and oil field or oil pipeline. Like it was like 3 different things that were like completely unrelated, and someone had to like go up and give a speech, and I was like, well, this should be interesting. And it was really interesting, like how those things went, versus other things where they're splicing together different pieces of either literature or songs or something like that in order to. You had one. What was it called? Shoes.
Oh yeah.
What's that event called?
Yeah, I did. I've competed in poetry interpretation throughout my time. And yeah, I've had pieces on shoes, on white privilege, on anxiety. I had one that was just like a Shel Silverstein poem that I read aloud. That wasn't that good. But
like the shoes one, it was like different songs about shoes that you put together.
Yeah. I had 7 different songs about shoes that like I kind of
My
spliced
Adidas
together.
by Run DMC.
Yes.
Wings by Macklemore.
Yeah. I can't remember. I actually never actually performed that piece. So if anyone wants a free poetry piece, it's unperformed, pre-cut. Just hit me up. It only costs $700. But yeah,
that's fantastic. We're just giving out ideas here.
Yeah.
So empower, suggest, and then the one thing I learned from this too. Again. Not that we're creating anything new, but just like I'm hearing a lot of stuff that's reinforcing some best practices on teaching. And I think like suggest, don't tell. I'm seeing that as like the number one way to parent teenagers. Like, for example, if I tell you to do something that you think is exactly wrong, that's going to go poorly.
Oh yeah.
At this point in time, because one, you're a skilled debater and it would become a debate versus, hey, let's go do this thing together. What about this? What do you think about doing it this way? Like to like go side by side with someone, see what they're seeing, and then offer suggestions that might benefit them versus like saying directly, hey, need you to do this and not having any sort of, sort of skin in the game on making that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that's I would say that's tough for me, not to respond to, but to do myself. Is a suggest, don't tell. I do, but is extremely important. Again, like when we talk about like how each person's stuff is individualized.
Right.
And so like it does require like mental reservation to be like, all right, like, you know what? Like I can let you know as much of the things I want to write your piece. Like we do speech practice. We try to do it once a week. It sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't happen. But it is just like, all right, like here's what, like it's just the entire room is just firing off comments, and it's like, take what you want.
Yeah.
Take what you don't want.
right.
Like there's gonna be and often like with these speech practices, it's like I think you shouldn't do this in your piece. Like I don't think this part's good. Change it, cut it, whatever. But then someone else is like, well, that was my favorite part. So it's like, and again, in such a subjective event, because it's like at the end of the day, you're being judged by a person. It's entirely subjective. It's the most subjective it can be. There's like no one should win. In fact,
there's not like a right answer.
There's no right answer. If you look at the final ballots of all of these national championship rounds, there is no consensus from anyone on who the winner should be, on who second place should be, on who third place, and so on and so forth. There's zero consensus. And so it's entirely subjective. And so it is important to suggest not tell, because I can say, this is the way that you win my ballot. This is the way that you would be the first in every single round that I was judging. But I'm not every single judge.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell them that, and no one can tell them that.
Right. And that's what it's kind of fun because, again, you had a chance to judge a lot of events at NCFL, and like you went back and looked at my ballots, and some of them where I was on the split side, some of them where I was on the side, like I was the only one that was on the opposite side of the winner.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but it's not like I was wrong.
Oh,
it's just my interpretation.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, at least I hope not. All right. The final one that I had was listen. And so the expect brilliance. So like you kind of said something soon, like before, where, you know, you didn't get in the way of a novice doing something that you're like, I didn't quite get that, but like you try that, and they try it and it happens. So it's like that opportunity for either one, like it's like a win-win situation where they're either they'll win with it or they'll learn from it.
Yes.
Like either way, some brilliance will happen where they'll gain brilliance by learning from their mistake, or they'll see like, oh, what we did, which maybe was unconventional, like worked. And okay, now how do we name what we did so that you can keep doing it? And then just that idea of expecting brilliance from some of those situations.
Yeah. So I think a unique example, at least from this past year, has been the world of policy debate. So policy debate is a very unique debate style. I say it's unique, but it's also like the oldest debate style. All the other forms of debate have actually came up in the past like 20 or so, 20, 30, 40 years. Policy debate's been around since the 1920s. But it's a very unique debate style. And our school just hasn't done it. We haven't done it. And at least
what do you do? They give you like,
so they give you a resolution. And so in this case, it was like the U.S. Should increase its cooperation in NATO in one of these 4 areas, and I can't remember what the 4 areas were. But then the affirmative, their job is to create the plan. So it's like
how do you put it into practice?
Exactly, like how should the U.S. increase its cooperation with NATO, and then they pick or choose some of the 4 areas, and then but like further explain like they should give $1 million to this fund, or like $1 billion to like increasing like AI, or I don't know. That's the point. I don't know. And that's the thing is like, I don't know anything about this debate style. No one on our team knows anything about this debate style. And yeah, we just don't know. But this year we were like, you know what? Like when we go to tournaments, there's these things called sweeps points. And it's basically like, how does a school win a tournament? Well, you have teams, individual debaters and speakers collect points by like doing well. And then they accumulate all the points, and then like whichever school has the most points wins the tournament.
It's like winning a track meet or winning a wrestling meet.
Exactly. So we were like, well, if we're not doing policy debate, that's just points on the board that first off we're not getting anything out of, And second off, other schools are just able to get easy points. So it's like, let's just try and eat away at their points at the very least. And maybe we can also get some points out of it. But so that's what we did. So this year we had 2 novice teams and doing policy debate. And I kind of took policy under my wing. And I tried to learn a little bit about it. I read some articles, but like I still don't even know anything about it. And it was really just like, hey, I found these resources on policy debate. Here you go. There's these data. So there are debate camps that happen each summer, which if you want to talk about equity and debate, I could go on and on forever about how these are harming the system. But the nice thing about it is they make all of their information files or their data files available for free online. So I was like, hey, here are all these camp files from these debate camps. And I'm like, you know what? Y'all just run with this and try and figure it out. And so at the first tournament of the year, the novice tournament, it was a round robin. We had one team who went 0-5. And we had another team that went 5-0.
Oh, wow.
So, and they had a lot of this exact same information, and it was just like figuring it out. And so I was like, all right. And then after the tournament, I was like, all right, talk to each other. Let's figure out.
What did you do?
Exactly. Let's figure out what we each can do. And now that team that went 0-5, they've become some incredible debaters and have really dedicated themselves to the event. One of them is like we were at the state championships and they were done. They went. I think they made it to quarterfinals in policy debate. The other team actually made it to finals. It was incredible. But the team that went 0-5, they made it to quarterfinals. So they were done by like noon on Saturday. And I come back from doing one of my rounds, and I look over and I see one of them just like typing away on his computer. And I go over and I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm working on my case for next year."
Wow.
We left the state championship in Oak Grove, and he had a rough draft of his case for next year.
Wow.
So it's like not letting someone first off beat themselves up over going 0-5, but just like, let's learn from each other.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out together. Cause again, like I was trying to take this under my wing, but I was like, I don't know anything about this. I can tell you general debate strategies. I can tell you like, you got to have an impact to win, or else like you're not going to be able to win. Cause it's like, why should anyone vote for you if you can't enumerate to them why the bad things that are going to happen if they vote for the other side. But again, just letting them figure it out on their own.
Which is, again, it's good stuff for teaching. I mean, helping, like giving structure. I mean, you're not just saying go nuts, but giving some tools, giving some guidance, giving some guardrails that allow a place to play. Right?
Exactly.
And then also, too, that allows them to have a little bit of motivation there as well because they're having some ownership of it.
Yeah.
So I also saw some other things, some lessons I learned from judging.
Okay.
And had multiple opportunities to judge this past year and a year and a half maybe. And more this year than any year. But the thing that I learned, and again, kind of like connecting it to assessment, right? And so assessing is gathering information and making a value judgment, assessment and then evaluation. So, and again, we're having a rubric. So there's a leaning on the description of success. So for example, I'd never judged a Congress event before. And so having the NSDA supplied a rubric that described success and then leaning on that rubric was good. Then also having like a way to do sustainable quality practice. So for example, I think I had to do 3 rounds of Congress?
At the tournament we hosted, or
no, that I just did.
Oh, just did.
You
did 3 rounds.
Yeah, 3 rounds, and they were 2.5 hours or
3.5.
What? Yeah, they were long, right? And so over that, you'd probably listen to how many speeches would there be? 40? No,
60.
80, like around 8.
Oh yeah. So like, typically there would be like 40 around 40 a round. Typically around 40 a round, and then multiply that with 3, so it's like 120 speeches.
Yeah. So think about that. And so for every speech, I would have to give a rating to.
Yes.
And like knowing that I've got 80 of these things, how do I do it in a way that I can, give them notes, give them some feedback, give them a rating, and then also be ready for the next speech.
Yeah.
Because I can't go back and remember everyone's speeches.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just impossible. And so do I have some shorthand for things I use? Did I have some things I used over and over again? Yes, I did. So I had some copy and pasting. Did I have the rubric and underline things that I was looking for? Also thinking about, they have a certain amount of time that they have to do. Was I incorporating the timing into my feedback as well? And then what would be, the measures of quality of success? And so having all that, it was like, it just made me think back to when I started teaching, where I was, if I handed out an assignment to my freshman math class, I knew that assignment was multiplied by 100 kids every single time.
Yeah.
So if I was going to take 2 minutes to look at this, this assignment, multiply that by 100, right? And so thinking about, well, what are some ways to give feedback in a sustainable way? And I've talked about that in the podcast before. And if you want, you can email me at joel@amidonplanet.com and I could give you some more information on that as well. But, having a way to do sustainable quality practice. And then finally, the one thing that I think is really important, especially in this sort of event or at these speech and debate events, is this idea of checking your bias. And every time we go into these events, there's always these things like, hey, make sure you're checking your bias. Like, do you go into a speech and debate round and have assumptions about who's going to win before you even heard an argument? And to just be honest about that and like to put them out there. So be like, hey, what are some assumptions I already have? Let's check them. Let's name them and put them off to the side so that you can actually come in with an open mind. And then go back to the other thing, listen and expect brilliance from both sides of the competition. Because, there might be some things where, even too, when you hear someone says or does something before the round even begins, am I even bringing that into no, let's set that off to the side. And I'm just looking at what they're doing within the performance. And I think that's something that over and over again, I see that. And almost like when I'm teaching, I almost want to do that too. Like, am I going in with an open mind to expect brilliance? Even if like I had as a high school math teacher where I'd have an interaction that was a little rough with the previous day with a student. Am I going in expecting the same thing, or am I going in with an open mind and saying, all right, how do I have an open mind to say, like, today's the day where some awesome things are going to happen?
Yeah, like I think one of the greatest emails I've ever seen in my speech and debate history was at the
bless you,
at the NCFL Grand National Tournament last year, 2022 in DC. There was an email sent out. It was like, judges or competitors, if you walk into a round and realize that you ran into that you were in a elevator with your like judge, or like you saw them or you walk past each other in the hallway of like your hotel or something, like say something, like we can switch judges around, like just trying to get ahead of like first impressions mean a lot. And it's like, do you really want to be judged by the person who saw you with your Rockets teammates at 3 a.m. in the morning, or hopefully not 3 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah.
But who are making a scuffle in the elevator, and just again checking those biases and making sure that they aren't being affected into the judging.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so I had some lessons on learning how to teach better that I extracted from my speech and debate experience. Like, is there anything I missed? What would you say? Like, if you had lessons that you learned on how to teach better? Because I think, again, as a captain and all your captains, like, I think you all have figured out how to create success, and which is cool, because even hearing Tommy this past year, who's an underclassman, is going to be an upperclassman coming up, he was talking about how he could learn from his experience at this national tournament in order to turn it into things he can share to the underclassmen coming up, which I thought was amazing. It just meant that I think that what you all are doing as a speech and debate crew is successful. But what lessons have you learned on how to teach better that maybe I missed, or something you want to underline?
Yeah, I think just always learning, because that's again a unique thing about speech and debate is like the people who often do, or at least at Oxford High School, the people who do the most coaching are our captains. That's the way we run it. We're student run, and so we are also competitors. We're also learning every single tournament. We also give each other feedback to the other captains in our room and be like, hey, like this is something, hey, help, like that HR here, fix your case about this, work on your speech tactic like this. In all of this, we're always helping each other, but we're also active competitors, and we're also learning ourselves. And so that's one thing, is like, we as captains need to never think that we are high and mighty and know everything there is to know about this event, because the thing is, we're not. We don't walk out of every tournament with a win. We don't know the best way to debate each round or to speak each round, or there are many events that we haven't done. And so we ourselves need to make sure that we're always open to learn and to grow and to get better ourselves in order to then help our younger teammates get better.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to share before we sign off here?
I think I'm good.
All right. Noah, thanks for visiting Amidon Planet.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm in my bed right now. Like,
exactly. All right. Thanks, Noah.
All right. Go Big Green.
There we go. There's my conversation with my son, Noah Amidon, who's going to be off to Dartmouth in the fall. He's just excited about that. He's just done really well for himself. So again, humble brag. Just proud dad. Let's just say that. Proud dad. And none of the things, again, I would just echo something I said in the episode. None of the things we mentioned are really like mind-blowing with regards to teaching. Like, those are best practices for teaching, but sometimes they get ignored. Like the one with the empowering students to make mistakes, like giving permission for students to make mistakes and giving them power in learning from those mistakes versus like cutting it off before they even make the mistake, stealing the aha from them because it might be, there might be a struggle there. Struggle's okay. We've talked about in this podcast plenty of times about struggle being okay. It's just how you position it. Is it an opportunity to learn, or is it just something that shows a lack of capacity, which it's okay. It's a lack of capacity yet, right? And so that's it. It's okay to struggle, and it's okay to make mistakes. And so again, not that we're plowing new ground, but it's just something that I think needs to be echoed. And there's some lessons learned here, especially given that this team has experienced a lot of success over the past few weeks, but then over the past years as well. So excited for Noah, excited for what opportunities he has ahead of them, and excited for the Oxford Speech and Debate team. I saw some awesome stuff and excited for where they're going to be going in the future. So that's about it for this episode of the Amidon Planet podcast. Show notes for this, and I think maybe put some connections to maybe NSDA, NCFL, in case people are wondering about speech and debate. And maybe if you're interested in supporting your local speech and debate teams, I would do so. And especially, too, if you've never thought about having your child or yourself compete in speech and debate. I just seen so much in the benefits with regards to confidence, with regards to ability to speak in front of others, which, that's a lot of people put that fear up there above a lot of things of public speaking. And then also, too, just the confidence in writing and preparation and like lots of good practices for life that happen there. So anyway, there'll be links in the show notes at amidonplanet.com/episode 84. If you're looking for ways to support the podcast, you can submit a question, comment, or suggestion to the mailbag by sending an email to joel@amidonplanet.com. We got some episodes coming up that are directly from those suggestions, so I appreciate that. And also, too, there might be some breaks in between trying to have a summer, and there's been a while between the last episode, and again, trying to do some self-care, and so not feeling guilty about not putting out a bunch of free episodes of something, but, I want to put out episodes. I enjoy it, and I think about putting out episodes a lot, so want to make sure to get those out. But if you have suggestions for an episode, I appreciate you sending them, but you can send them to joel@amidonplanet.com. You can also subscribe, rate, and review, and share this episode, or any episode that you want, which will allow more people looking for similar content to find it. As always, you can follow at Amidon Planet on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or like the Amidon Planet Facebook page. In addition, you can subscribe to the Amidon Planet download, which contains teaching resources and updates from Amidon Planet. Anywhere you see join the email list on amidonplanet.com is a place where you can get access to the Amidon Planet download when it gets released periodically. Finally, you can check out the Amidon Planet store, Amidon Planet bookshop. Links are in the footer at amidonplanet.com, where your purchases support the production costs of the podcast. Thank you for spending time on Amidon Planet. Thanks to Noah for sharing his time and expertise. Thanks to Matt Mifflin for the music in this episode. And finally, thank you to all of you out there for learning to teach. Finally, thank you to all of you out there learning to teach better and be the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you have decided to use the gifts you have been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do. Peace.